Today we're starting 2.6 quadratic formula. We're going to solve quadratic equations using the formula, and we're going to classify roots by using the discriminant. The main vocabulary word you have no clue what it means is discriminant. So far we've learned numerous ways to solve quadratic equations. We can graph, make tables, factor, use square roots, completing the square. The final method we're going to talk about is the quadratic formula. The nice thing about the quadratic formula, it solves any quadratic equation that's in standard form. I'm going to show you where it comes from. You don't need to write any of this down. If I have numbers, if I wanted to complete the square, what do you do first? Divide by 3. Then I'd have to take, well, I'm going to move this over to the other side. Take the b, cut it in half, and square it, right? So if I take the b, cut it in half, 5 halves becomes 5/6. Square it, it's 25/36. Factor it, do the subtracting. Square root, x plus 5/6 plus equals plus or minus square root of 13/36. Don't know the square root of 13. Square root of 36 is 6. They both have common denominators. So it's -5 plus or minus square root of 13 over 6. That's what you've been doing the whole last section, correct? Now, if I throw in the letters a, b, and c, remember the a is what's attached to the x squared. The b is what's attached to the x. And the c is the constant number. And it always has to be equal to 0. I'd have to divide by the a. Cut the b in half. Square it. Take the square root to get rid of the square. Subtract this over. Combine like fractions. And you're left with the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It looks very confusing at first. After a while, you'll start to remember it like nothing. The quadratic formula can be used to solve any quadratic equation that's in standard form. The common mistakes when using the quadratic formula, people lose the negative in front of the b. Also, a thing that's messed up is this part. This all over 2a goes over, it's underneath everything, not just the radical. So let's do an example. We're going to find the zeros of f of x equals 2x squared minus 16x plus 27. Now, we could try factoring. But if I try factoring, I got to look at what gets me a 2x squared, and then what gets me a 27. See if it's possible to get a 16 in the middle. There's a lot of thinking involved. I could complete the square, which means I got to divide everything by 2, then take the b. Might take a little bit longer. Quadratic formula will always work. X equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When you solve a problem, I want you to write the function or the formula down. The more you write something down, the more likely you are to remember it. Now I'm also going to do this. I'm going to write a, b, c. Where do I find a at? I'm not going to say the beginning with the x squared. What number's with the x squared? 2. What is your b? It's -16. Why? It's with the x. Not just the number, you also take the sign. Let's see. 27. It's either going to be equal to f of x or equal to 0. If it's equal to one of those, you have to make it so by rearranging. Now we're substituting. Negative. What's b? Negative 16 plus or minus square root negative 16 squared minus 4. What's a? 2. What's c? 27. All over 2 times what's a? 2. We've substituted in all the numbers. Now it's just solving. What's a negative negative? Positive. So I have 16 plus or minus the square root of all over. What's 2 times 2? 4. All right, let's do this fun stuff on the inside. What's negative 16 squared? Negative 16 squared. Now, if you're going to use a calculator, you need to be careful. If I type this and then hit squared, it's going to tell me negative 256. But what's a negative times a negative? Positive. Did I tell the calculator, take negative 16 squared? I told the calculator, take negative 16 squared. Negative 16 squared. 256. I'm always going to be squaring this number. What happens when I square positive? What sign do I get? Positive. What happens when I square negative? Positive. So what's that tell you about that first term? It's always going to be positive. $2.56. All right. Negative 4 times 2 times 27. Negative 2, 4, 27. And I put mine. Doesn't matter if I make it negative 2 or negative 4. No. It's going to end up, signs are going to be the same. But I'll fix it. Negative 2, 16. Please show me this work. I know the calculator can do all of the work for you. But if you mistype something in the calculator, it messes up everything. What do you think I should do now? Subtract. 16 plus or minus the square root of all of this over 4. I'm just going to move this down. Two times 2. What's 256 minus 216? 40. And there's your answer. What this means, I could have 16 plus the square root of 40. Notice I'm putting the 16 plus square root of 40 in parentheses. The top needs to be in parentheses, the bottom needs to be in parentheses if there's more than one term. Divided by 40. The first one is about 0.56. Or sorry, 4. I don't know why I put an extra 0. Go back, delete it, fix it. This is just to find the decimal. 5.58. No, you do not always have to do this. You can just leave it as the radical, but I'm showing you what the answers are. That's by doing the plus. I could also do second, enter, change that plus to minus. 2.42. 16 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4 is approximately 5.58 and 2.42. Just to show you even more, the original function, put it in the y equals 2x squared plus 27. When I graph it, I have a 0 here and a 0 here. Let's see if this works today. Where does it cross? In between what and what? Between 2 and 3. Wouldn't that be this one? Where's this one cross? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It crosses in between 5 and 6. So I know I did my work correctly. These zeros match up with these zeros here. Are we okay? I know it's a little bit of much first. One last thing. Let's see if who wants bonus. So let's try to get some bonus here. Try to simplify this. Remember, when we look at the radicals, do any of our special numbers go in there? The 4, the 9, 16, 25. 4 goes in there. What does 40 really mean? Plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 10. What's the square root of 4? 2. So what this really means is 16 plus or minus 2 square root of 10 over 4. Now I can take this further. What this really means here. What's 16 over 4? 4. Plus or minus. What's 2 square root of 10 over 4? Simplify 2 over 4. 1/2 of that over 2. We could go through this exact problem using completing the square, and that's what your answer would have been. Regardless of what method you use, you get the same answers. If you got this far, that's your bonus. Remember we talked about it, get just your basic answer. That's what counts. Try to go further, simplify the radicals. That's where you're going to get your bonus points. If you make your mistake, I'm just going to go up real quick. If you make your mistake between here and here, you're not losing points, as long as you have this. We good? Quadratic formula, what is it? The hardest part of these problems is probably remembering this. What's your A? There's no 1 there. How do you know it's 1? And x squared by itself means 1. B is 3. C is negative 7. Now let's just substitute in. Negative, what's B? 3 plus or minus 3 squared minus 4, 1, negative 7 over 2 times 1. You're noticing that these problems aren't overly difficult. It's just a lot of little math to do. Negative 3, can't do anything with it. 3 squared is 9. What's negative 4 times 1 times negative 7? What's negative times negative? Positive 28. And 2 times 1 is? Not everyone wants 2. What's 9 and 28? Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 37 all over 2. Can I do anything with 37? No. Why not? None of the perfect squares go into it, also 37's prime. We're done. That's your answer. If you want to know what the approximate is, that's where I can go. No, you do not have to do the approximate. The only time you would really want the approximate, or I'm going to tell you to, if we're talking about a real-world problem. We shoot an arrow in the air from the ground. When does it hit the ground? If I said that's the answer, does that make sense to you how long that is in time? No. I want to know what the decimal is because that shows me what it is in time. Let's try another. All right, for this problem, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac. This is where some of you are forgetting. It's all over 2a. That tells us our zeros. A, B, C. What's your A? 1. What's your B? Negative 8. What's your C? 10. But watch. This, no matter what, is always negative whatever B is. So it's negative whatever B is. So it's negative negative 8. Plus or minus square root negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 10. This is where I saw the mistake. It's all over 2 times 1. What's negative negative 8? 8. Plus or minus the square root of 8 squared is 64. Negative 4 times 1 times 10. Negative 40. Why is it negative on this one, but the last one was positive? Negative times positive is a negative. On this one, we had negative times positive. Even, so it has to be positive. There's an odd number of negatives, has to be negative. So what's 64 minus 40? 24 all over 2. That's your answer. Now to try to simplify this. Any special number going to 24? 4. 8 plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 6 all over 2. What's the square root of 4? 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 6 over 2. Here's another part where a few people are messing up. This has to go to both terms. What this really means here is 8 halves plus or minus 2 square root of 6 over 2. That denominator breaks into both pieces. What's 8 over 2? Plus or minus, what's 2 square root of 6 over 2? Square root of 6. That's your bonus answer. All right, for 4x squared plus 3x plus 2. Any of the methods would work. We're going to use quadratic formula today. What's the formula?
Plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac.
We got the first part down, but then once we hit that middle, it starts to trail off. Hey, we're a third of the way. Day 1, we're good. A is 4. B is 3. C is 2. Why are they all positive? Because they're positive in the problem. Don't put negatives that aren't really there. Negative 3 plus or minus square root. What's B? 3 squared minus 4. A is 4. C is 2. All over 2 times 4. X equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of something all over, what's 2 times 4? 8. Go back and do the fun part. What's 3 squared? 9. What's negative 4 times 4? Negative 16 times 2. Negative 32. Where I saw mistakes, magically that became positive. You only have one negative, so it's going to stay negative. Now, what's 9 minus 32? Negative 23. I have a problem. What's my problem? I have a negative radical. What happens when I have a negative inside the radical? I. What does I stand for? Negative 3 plus or minus I squared root of 23 all over 8. When I'm talking about zeros, what does this really tell you? If you have imaginary zeros, what is that really telling you?
That means that it never crosses
It never crosses the x-axis. These ones will cross at whatever the decimals are. You have imaginaries, it doesn't cross. A is positive, so actually it's going to be above the x-axis somewhere. Any questions?